Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 59th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. It's pretty crazy that we only have two more albums to discuss in this group, but just because we're at the back end of this set doesn't mean that these next two aren't as good as it gets. While I still haven't found some pretty important Southern LPs on my to-get list, at least at the time of this video, like any of the first three 8-Ball and MJG albums, or my favorite UGK album, Soul Food is one that I couldn't be happier to finally cross off that list. If you were to ask me to name five or maybe even just three essential Southern hip hop albums from the 90s to act as a sort of starter pack for a newer fan, Goodie Mob's debut album would have a guaranteed spot for me. I've talked about some of the different scenes created out of Southern hip hop in the 90s through acts like UGK, Ghetto Boys, Juvenile, or 3 6 Mafia, but despite the overlap a lot of these artists shared, I don't feel like anyone else can really do what Goodie Mob did, at least not as well as they did it, that's for sure. Even later successful MCs who would make their mark in the South, like T.I., would hold these guys in the highest regard as well as acknowledging and thanking them for paving the way. It might just be me, but personally, I feel like members like Cujo have this kind of Spice One element to their voice, where that aggressive and gruff style is put through kind of a southern filter, but there's also a clear hardcore boom bap influence on the production side. Lyrically, they managed to prove wrong every single negative stereotype people on the coasts had lobbed at them, and you can tell how the mob felt about it by the line on here about robbing a car that rolled up playing Rock the Bells. I think it was just a classic example of people hating something that was cool to hate at the time, so the reason is almost secondary and can be pretty much anything. For example, just a few of the labels Southern rappers dealt with in the early to mid 90s were being called country bumpkins and having people imply that they were too dumb to write interesting hip hop and that their areas were too boring and uneventful to spark interesting stories. That idea that nothing happened in these southern towns also led to their critics saying they wouldn't be able to have socio-political commentary the way an East Coast act like Public Enemy or a West Coast act like Ice Cube did. But all of these and more were proven false with Goodie Mob's debut, which features issues of race, government, gentrification, unity, family, religion, culture, and self-preservation. While CeeLo Green may be a bit more widely known for his later solo work and output as one half of the duo Gnarls Barkley alongside Danger Mouse, his roots were undoubtedly founded in hip hop. Obviously, his golden singing voice still turns up on Soul Food, but it's his distinct, crystal clear delivery and character that helps him really stand out amongst a crew of enigmatic MCs while rapping. Every verse CeeLo has on here is virtually flawless, and that's really saying something considering nobody spits anything remotely whack anywhere across the whole project. Even the features too fit this status quo, but I'll come back to them in a little bit. First, I have to share a couple of my favorite CeeLo moments, one of which is on Thought Process, where he raps, "Sometimes I don't even know how I'm gonna eat, about $20 away from being on the street. Shit, might see a rapper on TV, but hell, it's almost like I'm rapping for free. That little money be gone. God damn it, I'm grown. Gotta help keep the heat and the lights on. It would be nice to have more, but I kinda like being poor. At least I know what my friend's here for." Another one I want to mention is on Guess Who, which has the various members breaking down the trials and tribulations their collective mothers went through birthing and raising them over one of the coldest instrumentals on here. Each member has a pretty personal verse, and they all detail the different relationships each one had with their respective moms. And I love when CeeLo says, "My mama, destination unknown, went out on her own. She was barely even grown and became my mama. I never knew my dad, so even when the times got bad, I was glad 'cause I had my mama. For so long she had to be strong. I know at certain times she was wrong, but she's still my mama. It still amazed me. The Lord had to help her raise me, judging from the way I used to be." Another part that always stood out to me is when Timo says, "Sometimes we get it on. I know at times I'm wrong. Looking into her eyes just to let me know she tried. It's enough for me. I'm calling a truce. It seems we more like brother and sister, even though she paid the bills with the mister." I also have to mention Cujo's opening verse on Cell Therapy, which is probably the most successful song from this album, with a beat you'll probably recognize even if you aren't an older hip hop fan through the more recent use of the sample by Travis Scott. This whole song is genius, and the sense of anxiety the group creates paints this picture of someone who's paranoid over a government conspiracy and sits with a gun by the door just waiting for anyone to pass by his window. Cujo is even more nuanced with his verse, which at first is seemingly coded, but it's actually pretty prolific and ahead of its time when you really break it down. He's one of the members that has a unique, choppy flow that I really can't do justice. But a personal favorite part is when he says, where they say it in the Constitution that in the event of a race war, places like Operation Heartbreak Hotel, moments tear until airtight vents sealed off despair. Them say expect no mercy, fool, you should be my least worries. Got to deal with W-2s, 1099s, unmarked black helicopters swoop down and try to put missiles in mine. There's too many amazing moments to count, brought by the various featured MCs, like Cool Breeze's bar about stiffing Bill Clinton after he fronted him some weight, or Big Boy, who pops up on that same song with his unforgettable fucking around with hoes, busting nuts in they mouth, kicking that same southern slang looking for love up in your jaw ho. But of course, he isn't the only Outcast member to show up here and give us quotable lyrics, as Three Stacks himself arguably has the best verse on Thought Process. And there's also features by the likes of Joy, Witch Doctor, and Sleepy Brown. Speaking of Sleepy Brown, him and the rest of Organized Noise unsurprisingly did virtually all the production here, with one track co-produced by Mixo and one by Mr. DJ of Earthtone 3. For my favorite tracks, this one was even harder than usual to narrow down from the final 4 to 3 because I feel like all 4 belong in the absolute top tier, so I ultimately decided to leave Cell Therapy out, partially because I discussed it earlier, but also because I think it's the most well-known song from the album. That clears me up for my main 3 tracks to recommend, which are Thought Process, Guess Who, and I Didn't Ask to Come. I'd have to mention some runner-ups though, like the title track, Dirty South, Sesame Street, Fighting, Goodie Bag, Live at the OMNI, and The Day After. Thank you for watching my 59th video. We only have one more album left to go in this section, so tune in to see which 90s LP I'm gonna finish this group off with, as well as like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs off the album that birthed the term Dirty South are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.